This is something you guys posted on Discord, so let's watch it.
Greetings, travelers. I'm going to explain every difficulty in Final Fantasy XIV and what it means, only for them to add something new to the game and make this video stale and out of date, like that box of Cheez-Its that I bought when it was on sale. I still ate them. I see a small amount of confusion from new players when it comes to getting into
Just a side note, there is absolutely no reason to not eat stale food. Do you know what these cookies over here? They're called like the Napolitan cookies. They're like crusty, longish cookies with filled with like I don't know chocolate cream or vanilla or whatever, and pretty much any kind of snack that you would chew on that would be crunchy. I would normally, what I do is I open the bag of snacks and I leave it like that to just sit there for like 2 or 3 days. And after that, when you chew it, it's still crunchy, but you can also, you can taste that stale feeling like between your teeth. It's like it has this like soft note. The taste of like the overly sweet food has at that point kind of evaporated a little bit, and it's just pure enjoyment. So keep that in mind.
high-end content and rating. The answer that you're looking for is run whatever is the current Savage tier, beat it, and then you can start running the old Ultimates without fear of someone thinking that you are underqualified. Although beating the current Savage tier is not an actual requirement to start running old Ultimates. That's it. Video.
The thing about this is that as a content creator, you kind of if you're getting yourself into any kind of high end content at all, you kind of feel like that is your rite of passage in a way, especially if you're doing it for the first time like myself. So this is kind of a good observation, at least when it comes to that attitude. I think we've all found ourselves in that loophole at least once. Well, I'm still currently in it because I'm still secretly validating my own skills to myself through savages, but you know.
Go over. Now let's get out there and fine. I will explain all of the difficulty levels to further deepen your understanding of the definition of descriptors within the instances of Final Fantasy XIV. Normal content. This is plain old content, nothing special. The white bread and saltine crackers of content, if you will. Something that almost anyone can handle without getting an upset stomach. This consists of 4-man story dungeons. The rules are made up and the DPS doesn't matter. There will be trash, and there will be bosses made of trash. Both of these are weak compared to the real enemies of normal content, which of course are other players. This is where I was born, amidst the tainted wastelands of sleep-deprived college students and sleep-deprived, overworked retail employees. This is
And
because I
parents.
am the player who will get hit by a normal dungeon mechanic 3 times in a row, so people will go, "Man, Cheer, you fucking suck at this game." That is true. But remember, only the beta testers for version 1.0 are the good players of this game, nobody else. So if you mess up a mechanic in a normal dungeon, it's because you wanted uptime, even if you're playing a physical ranged. There you go. I have given you the optimal excuse. Much like Pokemon IVs, not all normal content is created equal. Some notable exceptions are good old Aurum Vale back when
Oh man, was that the burn?
content is
Oh, the burn is like the only dungeon where you actually need some real skills to finish it. I remember being here for the first time, and my chat knowing that at the time I was still so anxious about like duties and dungeons of any kind. They were like, "Ooh, let's get ready for this." This is gonna be like 2 hour content, and the worst part about it is that it really was.
created equal. Some notable exceptions are good old Aurum Vale back when it was required, and AoE markers didn't exist and no one knows how fruit work. My personal favorite dungeon is always the burn, because this ice
Wait, AoE markers didn't exist? What? I didn't even know that.
dragon has multiple impossible mechanics. Technically, there is a difficulty known as hard for your story experience. This is just a key word that means that you are going to go through the trial with 8 players. You might think that this makes the content harder, And you would be right, because you'll get me in an instance where I forget to tank the orbs, or even better, I might cleave the whole party with a tank buster. This is why nobody gives me responsibilities or power over others. The most popular, difficult, hard trials are going to have to be the Royal Margarine, the Seat of Sarsaparilla, and the Milky Crystal. A notch above normal dungeons and trials, you will have Alliance raids, which at this point the only story required ones are the Final Fantasy.
Is there difficulty really above the trials? I don't really think so. I think they in most cases are much easier, especially when it comes to like the newer trials. And by newer trials, I mean Endwalker, I mean Shadowbringers, and yes, the Stormblood trials that no one ever does, so no one knows anything.
Fantasy XIV equivalent of blacking out for 15 minutes and wondering how you drove over that entire distance. This has 24 players in them, and the raids that will make you actually do stuff are technically the optional ones. Dunscaith is my personal favorite place to go and watch people die.
God.
It is the small things that put a big smile on my face. Also, Thunder God needed to be nerfed because he was too powerful. Although after how hyped up the current 24-man was for its supposed insane 24-man difficulty, I have concluded that any 24-man that isn't part of the Crystal Tower is on par with each other in terms of difficulty after the nerfs to Orban Monastery in particular. And the wiping city of Mihawk, clearly. The last piece of the normal content sandwich is normal raids. These will have some mechanics that will probably kill you. Think of Alliance raids, but with only 8 people instead, so deaths can occasionally, almost, maybe, have some meaning, and running it completely blind usually results in pure chaos for like 30 minutes tops if you're really struggling. Some of these can be a little tricky for newcomers, but most groups can figure it out relatively easily even with no prior information, and you
Okay, I mixed it up. It was the alliance raids before the trials. I take that back.
will still fuck up Experimental Fire Plume after running the Savage version for months on end because nothing makes any sense. Oh, wait a minute. That's right, it's because of uptime. I almost forgot what I said earlier. The weird transition difficulty comes from 2 of everyone's favorite places, Eureka and Bozja. Bozja has fates and enemies running around the map, which really isn't that bad until you find a rank 5 or a star rank enemy that's going to kill you in about 1.5 auto attacks. Within the Bozjan instances, though, you do get critical engagements where the mechanics in those can be pretty complicated, but the punishment for messing up isn't usually immediate death. I honestly have no idea what the hell is going on with these clock mechanics, and the duels are pretty fucking intense, and have insane amounts of downtime between when you can try them again.
Dude, I haven't even started with Baja and Eureka yet, and it feels so bad after almost a year of playing. And you know what? I have my Dark Knight at 67 and my Gunbreaker at 68. If I convince myself somehow not to queue dungeons with my tanks, but instead do that, how great would that be for my player experience?
Again, that's why everyone just cheeses them. This is very well designed, and I have absolutely no problems with it. I would never express negative emotions about Bozjan duels. Eureka, on the other hand, is a hardcore zone in the sense that enemies hit hard, and death can result in you losing progress if you don't have someone else there to revive you. You also have to toggle the RP walk button to not wake up the big spooky dragon. It's pretty grindy to progress in the zone in any capacity. Most of the mechanics that you will see from a notorious monster are not going to be the worst thing ever, but the consequences of messing up are pretty rough. On release especially, Eureka was known for beating people to a pulp, being even more grindy, and being widely unpopular. This is why we have Infinite Echo buff and XP boosts out the ass in there currently, and
Is that why people are still hating on it?
I still hated how much time it ate up when I did it even after all the nerfs. The standout to hardcore Eureka content is the Baldessian Arsenal, which requires you to sign a waiver that your engine takes high-octane
Unimaginably punishing duty, even the entry conditions alone will not be easily fulfilled, and emerging triumph will require teamwork, tenacity, time, knowledge, courage, strength, and not the least of all, luck. What the hell is this? Is this really in the game?
In order to participate in the challenge. Although mechanically it's about as hard as an extreme trial, which I haven't discussed yet. But it's hilariously punishing. Just look up what happens if you mess up Black Hole. It is also the only 48 plus 8-man instance in the entire game, making it the perfect place to up the difficulty by playing with all of your effects turned on, which I do because I'm not a pussy. We are now entering the high-end rating category listed in Duty Finder. The first segment of designated hardcore content is Extreme Trials. The reward for beating these trials is nothing important.
Oh man, I was listening to the video but not listening at the same time. Like I hear something, like he discusses like one piece of content and I'm like, "Oh no, but that's more difficult or easier than the other one." And that other one hasn't even been discussed yet. Like what is wrong with me today?
And then you're going to farm it afterwards for a mount and occasionally getting a shiny weapon from it about 6 years later when it's finally added into the game out of nowhere. When you run these, most people will expect you to look up mechanics ahead of time. Although if you do manage to get a group of 8 people together who want to close their eyes for it, usually it's not going to take more than a few hours to get a clear. Depending. Mechanics are possible and probably won't outright kill you for making a mistake most of the time. There's also a DPS check that's going to require people to be awake. The extreme difficulty setting has been through a lot over the years, especially ever since one particularly notorious trial. So deadly that the devs said that they would never create such an unholy abomination ever again. And that was King Thornton. It was so hard that the ultimate fight that just came out is actually just the extreme trial tuned up to level 90 numbers. Yep, that is a very accurate and true statement. The more you know.
Yeah?
Warning, you are now entering the Savage Raiding Zone. Ah yes, Savage Raids. This is where boys are made into femboys, and where women are made into women plus one. Take everything that you learn from a normal version of these Savage Raids.
Can I just say, for moms, women plus one has a whole different meaning.
And burn it somewhere in the middle of the desert, because all that information is useless. 99% of the people run this content with strategies ahead of time that the community came up with. Such popular things include Ilya Strat, Xeno Strat, Braindead Strat, and my personal favorite, Every Man for Himself Spread Strat. Yeah, that one never fails to fail. The idea is that for each Savage Raid tier, consisting of 4-ish fights, it will get harder as you progress, with the last fight of each tier having an entirely unique phase just for playing the Savage difficulty. Screwing up mechanics will probably result in you dying, but if it doesn't outright kill you, it will give you a hefty damage down debuff to make the DPS checks incredibly tough, because they are pretty serious at minimum item level. Savage raiding, like extreme trials, have also been through a lot over the years. So much so that when people say they are new to raiding and they want to run old Savage as a way to prepare themselves for new Savage, I simply panic for a little bit, because old Savage was actually created by sadists. A Realm Reborn Savage in particular.
Do you know what? It feels bad when I listen to Misshapen's videos. Sometimes he just says these things that sound like they came straight out of my mind, because this is something that I've been using as an excuse for about, I don't know, months and months before finally starting to do the Endwalker Savages. It was like, oh, I'm gonna do the, Eden or God forbid Alexander or whatever, and people were like, no, don't do it. You will never get to Endwalker Savage. And at first I thought that was like a stab at my own skills, which I would understand, but now I think I'm starting to get it, and I'm glad that I gave up on that nonsense idea.
In terms of difficulty of mechanics, is way beyond what you would expect from anything that came after it. Nail is actually an impossible fight that not a single person in the entire universe ever cleared. Heaven's Ward Savage is
What?
still harder mechanically than what you would see in Savage today, but it was also coupled with DPS checks that were so high that you needed raid gear for at least a couple weeks for many groups to even have a chance at passing them. So needless to say, current Savage raiding doesn't have mechanics anywhere close to a Realm Reborn, and DPS checks that are tuned to be doable with day 1 raid gear, which is why trying to run old Savage content at minimum item level and with
I love just the amount of footage he's got. Like, obviously he's been playing the game for a very long time, but I like how you can also see like the old stuff that no one runs, or the old stuff that doesn't even exist anymore.
Echo is considered more of a challenge run than anything else. Even then, you aren't going to get the complete, authentic, old-school, hardcore experience, especially since certain mechanics can't server tick you into oblivion anymore. Nisi. Also, there is a 48-man Savage instance that came out of Bosja, and that is a completely separate thing called Delibrum Regine Savage. I'm not exactly sure where that fits into this whole scheme, so it's going to go right here where I say it does. You can't get revived normally if you die in this instance,
What?
and you either have to have people with special raise actions that have a small chance of working, or use a re-raiser that has a 70%, I mean zero.
What do you mean small chance of working? What? What are these game texts? What the hell? You will be forcibly removed from the instance after 10 minutes. Why is this place so depressing?
0% chance to proc. This stipulation of special raise conditions also applies to the Baldessian Arsenal, but I didn't feel like mentioning it earlier. Beating DRS, as it is called, not to be confused with DSR, will get you this big, cool mount. Wow, that is super neat and super cool. Now that you have completed the current Savage raid tier, welcome to Hell. In an effort to preserve the insanity that was once created in A Realm Reborn, there was a meeting held inside of the headquarters of Hard Game Company Incorporated, where it is said that according to rumors, Hidetaka Miyazaki himself was consulted to make the most intense and fucked up content in all of human written history. As they say, you will witness true horror.
What game is this?
Where they take old raids and old trials and old dungeons and layer multiple mechanics on top of each other for no particular reason, and then put some beta testers on amphetamines into the content to see if they can solve it. And if they do a mechanic correctly once, they say, ship it. Behold, ultimate content.
This is causing me to have like a slight panic attack because even though I only just cleared the Savage one, like the first circle, and yes, admittedly it's gonna take me months to clear it all, but is this what I'm supposed to do next? What?
It requires the best gear that you can get at the time, and it is mostly a test of endurance of you and 7 other idiots to see if you can stomach running something repeatedly until it works. You cannot run these fights unsynced ever, so their difficulty is not really preserved exactly. Before the stat squish, most old ultimates barely had a DPS check anymore, and the heal checks really didn't require much either. And now after the stat squish, you can consistently skip Ifrit dashes, yep, 100% of the time, but heal checks are a little bit more real again. There are 2 ultimate fights in Stormblood sync to level 70, 1 ultimate fight in previous expansion at level 80, and there are supposedly going to be 2 ultimate fights in Endwalker. The only one out currently being Dragon Song Reprise, and Dragon Song Ultimate is currently considered to be the hardest ultimate by some amount of players, because the Epic of Alexander Ultimate took about 5 days to clear.
100% accurate footage. When I was making that guide on what to do in Endwalker 6.1, I should have done this.
And Dragon Song Ultimate took about 5.1 days to clear, so that means it's about 0.1 days harder. This is a good way to measure difficulty, I would know as someone who hasn't cleared the fight. Most people will want to know if you are capable of beating the current Savage tier before you try to run an Ultimate, because if you're struggling on Savage at current item level, believe me, current Ultimate is going to eat you alive. Also, there can be puzzle mechanics in these fights that make you wonder what drugs the developers were on and how the fuck the world first teams managed to figure them out. You will want best in slot from the Savage.
Like these game gods, these savages, people who actually go in there for the first time and big brain the shit out of these mechanics are just wow.
Raid tier before trying the current Ultimate. These fights are also very long and very much a gauntlet, ranging from 16 to 20 minutes, to 5 minutes if you're a speedrunner, so have fun and don't die. Only sign up for Ultimate content if you like to suffer, and you want to bask in the glory of combat. Because I don't like the titles, and I think the weapons look stupid. Oh shit, I just said one of my negative opinions. Put your pitchforks down. That's just my opinion. You're allowed to like those things, just as much as I'm allowed to not like them. So yeah, that's all the different difficulties in Final Fantasy.
The weapons are stupid. That's like the hottest take I've ever heard in a video.
Fantasy XIV, and nothing about where to unlock everything because it doesn't make sense, and I don't care. Blue quests are not real, and they cannot hurt me. Also, Unreal is just an old extreme trial that has been upscaled. Bet you thought I forgot about that. Now let's get out there and run the actual hardest instance in the game. Titania, baby.
True. True. But in all seriousness, though, yes, no matter how accurate this may be, I still think that you can comfortably enter any content within the game. Yes, any content, and make it difficult for yourself by setting goals, by choosing to increase your skill and understanding of a certain piece of content. No matter what people say about the content and whether it's hard or not. Have you tried gardening? Maybe you should.